तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। अशेमवहु वहिष्ठेमस्ति उष्टास्ति उष्टामान् यदशाय वहिष्ठाय शेम। श्मा इस्राएल Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad। Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa। Buddham sharanam gacchami Dhammam sharanam gacchami Sangham sharanam gacchami। Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat। Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat। Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti।
Jai Sai Ram, everyone. Offering our most loving salutations at the feet of our lotus, at the feet of our beloved Lord, Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Welcome everyone to Region 2's SAIMA series. This is a monthly program where we have panel discussions with devotees from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. Today, we actually have two wonderful devotees from the 70s. And just before we get started to introducing them, I would like to make a very brief announcement. So next month, May, we actually have our Region 2's annual retreat. This annual retreat will take place during the Memorial Day weekend, starting on Friday, May 27th to Sunday, May 29th. We would like to welcome everyone to the Poconos Mountains, Camp Westmont in Pennsylvania. This is an in-person retreat and all safety protocols will be taken. In fact, we are blessed to have 3 amazing speakers. Sister SAIMA Diwan, Brother Leslie Farkas, and Brother Jonathan Roof. Please go to the website, which has details of our guest speakers, schedule, activities for young adults, SSE children and adults, and of course, safety protocols. At the website, you can also find the registration form, and we will share the website through the chat with you as well, but it's also on this flyer. And we would like you to register by as early as possible by May 6th for early registration, although you can register even after that. Registering by May 6th allows us to plan, but you're always welcome to register and attend. We're looking forward to seeing you at the retreat. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to any one of the committee members and we will be happy to answer any questions. Because of the retreat in May, we will not be having our SAIMA Satsang during that month. However, we look forward to seeing all of you for our next SAIMA in June. So coming back to our wonderful guests for today, wonderful devotees from the 70s, Sisters Michele Kaplowitz and Sister Heidi King. I'd like to welcome both of you. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So let me take a few moments to introduce the two of you. So Sister Michele Malvin Kaplowitz was introduced to Sai Baba in 1969 when she was just 25 years old by her friend Lynn. Lynn told her that she met God in India and played the recorded album where Swami talks about the Bhagavad Gita. Upon hearing Swami's voice, there were tears in Michelle's eyes. Michele finally arrived in Prashanti on March 1st, 1970, and spent 3.5 years in the early days. Along with few other Westerners, Michele had a unique opportunity to walk and talk and receive many teachings from Swami. In 1977, Swami performed Michelle's marriage to Richard Kaplowitz. Swami subsequently named her 2 daughters. In 1985, they spent 10 years living in Prashanti. Michelle's journey brings her much joy and hopes to share some of this joy with everyone today, and we cannot wait to hear about it also. We'd like to introduce you to Sister Heidi King. Sister Heidi King arrived in Vrindavan to see Swami in January of 1971, and she stayed in India for almost 3 years. She was blessed to be staying at the ashram during these times and had many close and transformative experiences with Swami. She has also made several trips to Prashanti in late 70s as well as in 2002. Heidi is a painter and a sculptor. She received her MFA in studio arts. She was married in 1993 and currently lives between New York City and a little old farmhouse in upstate New York. For the last several years, she has been working on a manuscript based on the extensive journals she kept while she was in India, and hopes that it conveys a sense of what it would be like to be living there. And in fact, we are hoping to hear that from you today as well, to have your experiences, your collective experiences while you were there at the same time as well. Few things that's come up as we were discussing this earlier is that both Michele and Heidi love to expect and accept his uncertainty. There have been instances where Swami teaches through situations by stirring the pot. So they want to hear that too. Swami shows his Shiva side, which is the teaching side, and also his Krishna side with his humor. And one thing for us to think about is that we go to Swami to find who he is, but in return, we find out who we are. So these are some top areas in which we'll be covering today, amongst many others. Let me start with Sister Michele. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to know, what made you travel to Swami? How did that happen? And what was it like meeting or seeing Swami for the first time?
Oh my God. Okay, I think that people are on the path, even if they don't know they are. So I was living, a young person's life in New York City, a very fast-paced life, and I was sensing that this is, what is this? What is God? Even when I was 8 years old, I can remember walking down the street, looking behind me, saying, where is time? What is time? What is this? So I think I was a seeker, and my grandmother always blessed us, you should find God. She didn't expect me to find it in India, but her blessings also were always there. So I got into Mahesh Yogi for a little bit, and I was looking under many different rocks. Who am I? What am I? What is good? And I really realized that I needed something. And sometimes I think that the reason I got so lucky was because somebody had to save me, and it was God himself. And that's so when my friend Lynn, who had been in India already for 2 years, called me up and said, I met God in India. I was a little skeptical. I said, yeah, sure, tell me about it. And she played the record album and tears sprang to my eyes. And she said, well, do you want to go back? I said, do you want to come with me? I want to go back. I said, yes. So we sent telegrams to Swami. And this is the telegram we got back.
Oh, that's the actual telegram you got back?
Back from Swami. I am permitting Jay Mazo, Lynn Rubenstein, and Michelle Malvin, disciples of Hilda Charton, to stay at Prashanti Nilayam, India, for spiritual solace and sadhana training for a minimum period of 6 months. From the date of arrival, they can come by early March in time for the Shivaratri festival and stay on, convey blessings to all devotees, Ejmati family, and others, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. So that was great. So with this, this helped us get entry visas into India, because otherwise you could only stay really for 3 months or maximum 6 months. So with this, we arrive in Prashanti Nilayam with our suitcases in hand. We had taken airplanes, trains, and then a horse cart to get to the ashram. And we walk in what is now the Ganesha gate. Of course, there was no Ganesha there then, and no walls, nothing. We just walked in, put our stuff down. I think it was on the men's side. Yeah, we put our stuff down. We didn't know men's side, ladies' side. We didn't know anything, but we knew enough to wear saris. And it was not Lynn. She never got back in the country at that point. It was me and this Jai Devi, who was a devotee of an obscure Indian Lalita Devi. And he had never left Brooklyn before. So anyway, we put our bags down. We found Mr. Kasturi. We showed him the telegram. He went up to Swami. Swami says, and why have they come now in the middle of Shivaratri? So that's the first uncertainty. And he says, tell them to stay outside. And I said, Mr. Kasturi, we have traveled through thousands of miles. I'm not staying outside. I will sleep right here. And he went back upstairs, and Swami said, give them a room to put their luggage and let them sleep on the veranda. But when I walked in that gate, that Swami appeared, the real Sai Baba walked onto his back veranda. And when he stood on that back veranda, he looked like energy dots, just energy dots, as if in the early days before television became great, if you wanted to show somebody in California and somebody in New York, it was always very grainy and dotty-like. So it was like he was just a bunch of energy. And, you know, my heart just was opening and falling in love. And even from the time before I got this telegram, after I heard that record album, I had a dream of Shirdi Sai Baba. And in the dream with Shirdi Sai Baba, he poured vibhuti all over my head. And all I was thinking of until I got there for 6 months was Sai Baba. So then I see him as this energy up on the balcony, and my heart is just opening. So it was wonderful to be there. I mean, he called Jai and I in. It was Shivaratri, so it started to get very crowded. He called us in on the third day of our being there. And I was starting to get sick. I didn't know what people kept saying, drink bananas, drink bananas. I thought, how do you drink bananas? It was orange juice. I didn't know that at the time. It was just an incredible experience. So he called Jai and I in. I stumbled into the interview room, and he materialized something for someone. He threw it right past me, and I'm thinking, no, I'm knocking on the door of your heart. All I want is your love. All I want is your love. And he kept materializing things for other people and throwing them past me. Another introduction to Swami. And then he said, come to Vrindavan after Shivaratri, which we proceeded to do. And I just wanted to talk about some of the ways in which Swami taught me. So one of the things, if Swami didn't talk to us for 3 days or in a row, I mean, he often talked to us every day, but if he didn't talk to us for 3 days in a row, I mean, we were heartbroken. We were devastated and crying. And so I see this mother sitting with a child in her lap, and the child obviously was blind. So the mother was blowing the nose and taking care of the child. And the thought came in my mind, this mother is going to make this child deaf and dumb besides just blind. And I said, see, Swami is not that kind of a mother. And I understood that he was going to teach me many, many lessons. He really became my mother and father. He became a new father and mother image. And if he believed in me, I had to believe in myself. I had put all of my eggs in one basket and saying, please be God, or I don't think I'll make it on this planet. And he never disappointed at all. And he became my mother and father. And just seeing him was wonderful. In Vrindavan, when I got to Vrindavan, after Shivaratri and the big crowds had gone, Mr. Ram Brahma comes down the driveway in Whitefield and says, Swami's only coming out on Thursdays, everybody should go. And I think it was like a Tuesday. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've come so far. And anyway, as we were starting to walk out, Ram Brahma came and said, are there those 2 people here from New York? So that was me and Jai. And the Swami called us in. And then he called us into the front veranda. And he told me my life story. He said, you're always thinking, what is this life? One water bubble after the next. He says, I know. He says, one marriage, 1 month away, and then no marriage, isn't it? Yes, Swami. He says, you are good. You are very good. Don't worry. Stay here for 6 months or more. Now I'm trying to really remember. And by telling me this life story, he won my heart. He won my belief. He could not have known these things. There's another wonderful story about Jim Sinclair, who's a devotee of Sai Baba's. But he was in New York City. He was a very wealthy man. He was on the West Side Highway. He told me the story himself. And he said, God, where are you? I'm here on the West Side Highway. where are you? And that was the end of that request. But when he went home that night, he saw a figure in his house with an orange robe and a big afro hairdo. He saw him 3 times. 10 years later, he saw a television program that was talking about Sai Baba and said that he was in Prashanti Nilayam. And he said to himself, oh my God, that's who I saw in my house. And when Sinclair made it to Prashanti Nilayam, Swami came, he said, what took you so long? Didn't I come to you 3 times? Swami's miracles were many.
Many, many miracles. It seems like he brought you in, won your heart over by answering your question that he is God, just before he starts to test you with so many other ways, right? So
there were very many ways of being tested. I mean, later on, so there were times where there was a time, no, you are good. He asked me, why are you crying? I was in the interview room and I said, Swami, I have too much desires. He says, no. He says, not desires, too much love for Swamiji. He said, no, Swami, I have too much anger. He says, no, Bangaru, not anger, only body weakness. And no, there's another one he said too. I'm sorry, I'm not so sharp today. And so here he praised me, all these praises. Heidi will remember the time he called us the Pancha Pandavas. And, your ego, oh, we're the Pancha Pandavas. He said, he said, pointed to me and he said, Arjuna. And 5 years later, I'm sitting on the ashram and there's some ladies from Delhi sitting near me. And I hear them talking and they said, oh, do you remember when Swami called us the Pancha Pandavas? So he has a way of building you up and also taming you down. Because who am I? Nothing and everything is the same place. That is something to contemplate. Nothing and everything is the same place. And I like that and I meditate on that quite often. Or I'll hold on to the ground and say, Swami, make me the sand. Like in Mahabalipuram in Madras, where Swami was walking on the sand. And this story was told to me by a very, very old devotee of Swami's from the early days, where the ocean came and deposited a ring of pearls around Swami's feet. So I often pray, make me the sand under your feet, or make me like the sand in Prashanti Nilayam, just nothing is everything.
Thank you, Michele. Thank you. So Heidi, we wanted to know how you became to be in Prashanti Nilayam. And I know that Michele was already there when you arrived, but we'd like to know how you got there and what your experience of seeing Swami for the first time was like.
Yes, well, I would say it started in a way when I was only about 19 or 20, because I was very much into literature, as was a friend of mine. And we challenged each other to read the Bible, mostly as a kind of literature for its literature and cultural what's in there. But in the course of reading it, I thought, boy, either these are all just total made up stories, or why is it that God seemed to be intervening in people's lives in so many different ways over centuries. And now I didn't see any, I didn't see that in the world I saw around me at all. So why isn't he here now, in other words? And that was kind of a doubt in the back of my mind. And like Michele, I had a lot of doubts about myself, but also about the world, and why was it like it was, in particular the Vietnam War was raging then, and our government was doing all these things that just felt extremely reprehensible to me. So I wanted to understand that. I wanted to know what that was about, and it disturbed me a lot. But by chance, I think it would have been in June of '68, my father said, oh, Ram Dass is giving a talk in Pennsylvania, the weekend seminar. Do you want to go? And for people who maybe don't know who he is now, he had been Richard Alpert, and along with Timothy Leary, they had both been thrown out of Harvard for giving LSD to to students there. But he had gotten kind of, as he told in his talk, he had gotten kind of disillusioned about what one could gain through LSD. And he went to India, really seeking a guru, although I don't think he was quite admitted that to himself at the time. But he did, again, through this happenstance, found this guru, and it also involved certain miracles, and this guru telling him stuff about himself, as Michele said, Sai Baba did so many times. So he came back, and this was when he came back, he started giving talks about this experience of his and about Indian culture and religion and yogic teachings. And he was very, very good at this. And it was just like all of a sudden, a door was open to me that I had no idea was there. And I really, very quickly after that, it changed my whole life around. He came back and gave a series of talks in what would it have been in that fall and winter, and the following summer. He had a long retreat up at his father's place in New Hampshire, and he was teaching basic yogic teachings and meditation, and we did bhajan scene and all that kind of stuff. And then he invited anybody who wanted to do a more rigorous retreat to apply. He was going to take a small group out to this commune in New Mexico called Lama. And I think it was like 2 months long, this retreat out there. And it was very inexpensive. And I was fortunate that he chose me. And it was there, and a lunch one day, he read a letter that had been written from one of the people who had been at his place the previous summer, who talked about having met this woman named Hilda, who had been in India for a long time and had met this guru named Sai Baba, and that he had materialized a ring for her in which his form would appear. And I heard this and thought, by this time, I had done a lot of reading. I had read kind of like everything I could get my hands on, from Christian mysticism to Hindu mysticism to yogic teachings, all kinds of things. And in the course of that reading, I had gained I'd come across the idea more than once that a true seeker may gain powers, but they shouldn't use them. So I was quite dismissive of this idea. Here was this guru who did miracles. And I thought later, quite a bit later, in an interview in Prasanthi Nilayam, Swami called us young Westerners. He said, you're like hungry puppies, and you lap up so much milk that you make yourself sick. And you have great book knowledge, but you don't really understand. And thinking back, that's kind of pretty much where I was at that point when I was dismissive like this. Anyway, after this retreat, it was in December now, I think, a number of us went out to California. And we went to all kinds of different, any teachers, anybody. We were going to everything that we could hear about, practically. And in the course of this, I went to a talk by Indra Devi, and she showed this film of Sai Baba. And there was a point in this film where you see the gate at Brindavan opens, and Baba comes walking out, and it looked, he wore this long robe that dragged on the ground, and he would hold it up a little bit, but yet he seemed to be just gliding across the sand. He hardly seemed to be walking. And that was what impressed me. Seeing that one image changed my mind. And at that point, Sai Baba had told, Indra Devi had a lot of students in Southern California. She'd been teaching Hatha yoga there for many years, and then had gone to India and met Swami and started teaching about Swami there. And she had an ashram on the US-Mexican border in Tecate. And Sai Baba was telling these Americans, especially these Southern California, there was quite a group of Americans who had gone to see Baba or knew about him. And he was telling them that he was going to come to America for a visit. So a group of these people who had enough money had bought a piece of land adjacent to Indra Devi's on the American side, so that the young Americans could see Sai Baba when he came to America, because the Mexican government was very suspicious of anybody who looked like a hippie and wouldn't let them cross the border. And a lot of us look kind of like hippies, I guess. But so I lived at this ashram for a while, and I there weren't many people there. People would come and go. I kind of became a caretaker there. But after some months, I decided, well, it doesn't really look like Sai Baba's going to come here, so I better go there. So I went back to San Francisco, worked for a few months. I remember when I finally finished the project I was working on, I had $1,000, and I had it stacked on my little puja table. And with that money, I went to India, stayed there for, as you say, almost 3 years,
Yes.
came back as far as London, and then I had to borrow some money to get from London back to the States. So I came back to New York, visited my family here, and flew over first to London, and then to Bombay, and then the train down to Brindavan, all of which took, probably 10 days at least or something. I don't remember exactly. And Swami at that time was in Brindavan. Everybody, we stayed at this Regent guest house where a lot of Westerners would stay, and everybody knew where Sai Baba was. You could ask him, well, is Sai Baba in Puttaparthi, or is he here in Brindavan? So, he's in Brindavan. So take the train out to Brindavan, walk across this big field onto the college grounds. And it was a bhajan day, so we were sitting under the pandal around that tree there, which you'll see some pictures of later. And suddenly, it was like this electric current went through the crowd. And I turned around, and the gates are opening, and Swami walked out, and it was just like that movie. I felt just the same way. And I was just like, that was it. I don't know why, just seeing this being across how many yards away, it just totally knew this is it. I'm staying here. This is what I'm looking for, I guess. But of course, by the time I got there, Swami was not talking to the Westerners too much. In fact, Michelle might want to tell a story later. He was kind of, can I say, annoyed at some of them. I was ready to throw them off the ashram.
Was it after the Goa incident?
No, this is after trying to stop Swami's car.
Oh,
on the
yes.
road.
Oh, we thought we were the gopis.
Yeah. Anyway, after a few weeks, Swami then went to Puta Party, and I was introduced to that. And I think you, Michelle, were the first person I met when I got off the bus, because the bus would come in from Bangalore in the evenings, and usually at least some of the people who had been at the ashram for a while would be there to meet whoever new Westerners might get off and tell them what to do, where to go, kind of thing. And it was right before Shivaratri, and our first interview was a big group interview with all the Westerners who were there. And the one thing I guess we met, I was never good at remembering what happened in these interviews, because I was so involved with just being in Swami's presence and looking at him that like my mind disappeared or something. But I remember he asked at one point, what does it mean to surrender to God? And somebody put up their hand and said, oh, it means to give God your mind and your body and your soul, or something like that. And Swami said, no, that's all hot air and gas. He said, how can you give God something that you don't control to begin with? And then he said to surrender to God was to see the divine everywhere and in everything, and that was also faith. And that's always been a meaningful teaching for me. And personally, I think it's a very tough teaching, because that means seeing the divine in the stuff that certainly doesn't appear divine. Can I put it that way? Not just seeing it in the flowers and the birds flying around and somebody loving you and that kind of thing. But I take it as meaning really seeing it in everything in this world. So it was an important teaching for me.
Yeah, that's a very, very powerful teaching. I think total surrender to Swami is really seeing God, or seeing the divinity in all and everything. Thank you for sharing that. Michelle, please go ahead. Yes.
I wanted to tell another story that talked about that. So all these we were all young, and then our early and mid 20s, and a couple had come, and this one girl came over to me and says, "Why are you always running after him?" She says, "Don't you know God is everywhere?" She says, "Why don't you meditate and go within?" And so, it seemed to make sense to me. So I tried sitting in the back, and I often found myself in tears. Like I'm trying to sit in the back and I'm trying to meditate and find God inside. And it wasn't fun. So we had permission to be in his garden. So I was in his garden, and Swami came over, and I said, "Swami, somebody is telling me God is everywhere and in everything, and I should go within and find God within." I said, "On the other hand, your form is beautiful, and one wants to follow it everywhere." He said, "See, God is everywhere and in everything. This is true," he says, "but as long as you have your body consciousness, you can use this form as a tool. When your body consciousness goes, this form will also go, like a water bubble." And that's, again, it's a path, it's a path. And so that was a wonderful experience. Another experience in the garden was I was thinking one day, oh, Swami's never called me by my name. And then I went home. I think Heidi, I don't know where we were living. Maybe we were living in Colonel Naidu's place. And I had a dream. And in the dream, Swami said, "What is your name?" I said, "Michelle." He says, "No, Indian name." I said, "I don't have one, Swami. You'll have to give me one." He said, "Shanti, TK." So I was very happy. It was all just a dream. And the next day I was standing in Swami's garden, and he was around the backside of the garden where he used to take some private interviews on the opposite end of the mandir. Anyway, of the Vrindavan. So Swami came out and he said, "What is your name?" I said, "Michelle." He says, No. he says, Indian name. I said, I don't have one, Swami. He said, only Shanti TK. So, I mean, can you doubt when you're given so many experiences? It's not faith anymore. It was handed on a silver platter by Swami. And then Swami can be very, very confusing. So Muktananda came to see Sai Baba, right? Ram Das, who Heidi already spoke about, brought this whole contingent down to see Sai Baba with Muktananda. And they didn't know the disciplines or anything, women's side, men's side, it's all in Vrindavan. And it was quite of a hullabaloo. So Swami sent all those people to go into one of the college buildings. And it was a very interesting, and they waited quite a while for Swami to come out. And then it was almost like a boxing arena. They were all the Westerners, and we were all so excited, and we were so young, and we were so irreverent. I mean, he was our mother and our father. We didn't, we knew he was God, but he was also our mother and father, and we could do all sorts of trespasses. So anyway, he's talking to Muktananda, and they're talking in different languages and like that. And afterwards, when Muktananda left, all the Western people were touching his feet, and I thought to myself, well, he's certainly something greater than me. I don't know who he is. So I thought it was respectful to touch his feet. A couple of hours later, I'm standing in Swami's garden again, and Swami comes out. He says, where is he, your Guruji, Muktananda? I just stood there, no Swami, no Swami. He says, he is saying, this is the richest man, this is the richest man. He says, who is the richest man? He was the least desires is the richest man. Again, the teachings were very many, and sometimes they came directly from his mouth. Like he gave us an interview and he said, love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. My life is my message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no season for love, no birth, no death. At that time, he was asking all of us Westerners to come in and sing bhajans every night in the Vrindavan Mandir. And it was quite a trial to come up with new bhajans and this. So this man named Bruce Bradbury, he went back, he put those words of Swami into a 3-part harmony. And we sang it for Swami that night, along with a Telugu bhajan that somebody tried to make, and like Mudu, Lubudu. And Swami says, it's Telugu? So, and it was really fun. And also Sai Baba, so kind. And Swami said, so kind or no kind? And during that time, there must have been, I don't know if it was 15 days or 7 days. It's like when you have an epiphany, you don't know if it's lasted a minute or forever. And the Rajmata of Jamnagar was there. And she said, Swami, why are these Westerners so lucky? He said, it is their good deeds from past lives. They don't know it now. They will only know it later. And I think that was very true. We saw him as our mother and father. We knew he was God, but we were also didn't realize what good chances we had. And Howard's book really showed what good chances that we did have.
But actually, I'd like to say something partly, I guess, relating to that. And just the odd way that Swami had of doing things sometime. I remember it was, when would it have been? I went back to look at some of my manuscript to see these notes, but it was sometime in mid-72, I think, when you, Michelle, came talking to me and saying, oh, you've just been talking to Dick Bach. And he was talking about how there was so much dissension in California, among the older devotees and the younger devotees. And that this was happening because while Swami was often so positive and praising us to our faces, he was telling these California devotees that we were hippies and that we were living like dogs, and that all these very critical things. And that's what I mean in a way when I often felt like he was stirring up a hornet's nest, actually. And I think I take those instances as maybe even more important, because to me, they raise the questions in one's mind. And I think if there's one thing I have thought about Sai Baba, I don't think he did anything by accident. I think it was all very deliberate and done for some kind of reason and some kind of teaching.
He once didn't call Vijay into an interview that he had with the rest of the foreigners, and he came out and he said to her, he says, "Do you think Swami makes mistakes?"
Mhm.
And then there was the time on the Gita, when Gita used to garland him. And I was with Suzanne, and Suzanne wanted to go to America, and she had somebody else's ticket and passport, and she was going to try to use those. And Swami came out. I was actually going to tell the Vijay story, but anyway, Swami came out and he walked right over to her. And I said, "Swami, she wants to go to America." And he looked at the passport. He opened it right to the picture. He says, "This is not you." He says, "What do you need?" And he sent her the money to go back to America. But Vijay and I were sitting on that same darshan line, and we were talking about someone that we were mad at.
Mm-hmm.
And we were bad-mouthing him for 10, 15 minutes. Swami walked out and he came over and said, "What were you talking?" And we didn't say anything. He says, "See, don't talk bad about others. Only talk about spiritual things or Swamiji." He says, "I hear every word everyone speaks everywhere." And Heidi, you know
Yes, Swami had been sitting in the bhajan hall during bhajans. So he got up from his chair in the bhajan hall to come out and come over to you and say that, which is, yet on the other hand, then you hear about him talking, bad-mouthing us. So,
but he loved to stir the pot. When we got into the mandir and you finally got 1,000 to 5,000 ladies seated, and there was like 5 inches in the front, Swami would wave his hand and there would be a stampede coming up. And and also in another interview, Swami said, "Sometimes I am talking," he says, "and everyone is very happy when I talk to them." He says, "Sometimes I don't look, I don't talk." He said, "That is a better time, sir.
Mm.
That time you are looking deep inside what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad." He says, "Better time," like you said. And those were words that he said in interviews. And Swami liked to, if you thought as soon as you were complacent, he would throw a monkey wrench. And everything would go upside down, and you'd have to figure it all out over again.
Yeah, I remember this one instant just illustrates how he often did things. There was a young woman there who had just had a baby. And this was a period when he wasn't talking to the gents much at all. He was talking to the ladies a little more. And he sent word out to us that we should all come in the morning at, I think, 10 a.m. for baby naming. So we all came and we sat up by the gate waiting, expecting to be called in. And I guess it was Ram Brahma comes out and says, "Why are you sitting here?" And we tell him, Baba called us for this interview. So he said, so he goes back in and checks, and he comes out. No, Baba said no. So we go back and sit on the regular darshan line, and together as a group. Baba comes out later for his regular darshan, gives darshan, and as he walks back into the house, he pauses in front of us and just looks at us and says, "Actors," and walks on into the house. So now we don't know what to do. Should we wait? Are we going to get called for an interview? So we all hang up out there, probably till almost noon, Or would we hang out there all day? Maybe. Finally, word comes out that, in fact, he is calling us in for this interview. But so often he would do things like that. He could have just called us and done it, but
No, but, and I remember that. And I don't remember that incident, but I think, and I've thought often, that one of the reasons Swami does some of those things, because now you have to contemplate, what does actors mean? What does actors mean? So that, oh God, I wish I didn't lose train of thought. So India was going, our friend whose name was India, and Swami often spoke to India. And so India was going back to America, and Swami said he would see her. And so she, Vijay, and I were sitting outside in the garden by the side of the interview room. And it's getting late and it's almost time for her to go. And Swami walks out and he's starting to give darshan, and it's late. I said, Swami, she's going now. He turned around and took us into the interview room. But in that interview room, he slapped her. And it was like a big slappish. And he says, no, he says, later. And then we all went, oh. And later he said, no, next she is in America, remembering. That is also a meditation. So I think that we meditate on some of the things he said and did, and trying to get closer. And memory is a very important key, because when we remember, we feel the joy. The other day, I felt like I was sitting on that outside, waiting for Swami's gate to open. And you know how we sat late at night, later. Mm-hmm. And that brought me a lot of happiness to just remember.
So you were saying the remembering is meditation. I think you had mentioned that sometime as well.
Yes, that is also a meditation.
And earlier, India was having a lot of tooth problems and pain, and told that to Swami. And thinking back on it now, I think maybe she was hoping that Swami would cure her. But instead he says, cut karo. In other words, cut her head off, which would take care of your tooth pain, certainly, but a little extreme maybe. But that's kind of also his humor. And then later, and it might even have been in that interview you're talking about, Michele, that just before she left, she was stung by a scorpion. And she told this to Baba. And he said, oh, it's a good sign. Your husband giving trouble. Again, not what you would think of as the usual response to somebody telling you something like that. But
and that was, we loved that about him. That was, he was so funny. It
was one of the reasons why it was so delightful to be around him, because you never knew what he was going to say or do, and it could be such a surprise.
And he called you a Chandralekha or a Dunaputta. It was endearing. He'd walk up to people on the darshan line, one lady who was very overweight, and he said, oh, are you taking the elevator in your building? And she said, yes, Swami. He says, no, take the stairs. And he once stood in front of me and he was yelling about something about my husband. And, I'm sitting there completely devastated, and all the people around are saying, oh, what did he say? What did he say? He told me and Vijay that we were worse than monkeys and donkeys. And monkeys were better. Dogs were better, sir, and monkeys were better, because he said, give chance to others, because we sat in the front. And I wouldn't sit in the front again for at least a year or two. It was really scary. But also, once I was walking through the field, at the back of Vrindavan was an empty field until Kadaguri in those days. There were no bungalows, no houses. And I had a bunch of grapes. I was walking back from the ashram Heidi and I had these little huts at the back in a farmer's thing. That was interesting. Anyway, so I'm having some grapes in my hand, and a young boy comes by and he steals the grapes. And I'm thinking, I'm mad, he's taken my grapes. And then it comes to my mind, that boy was Swami and he took your grapes, you would be thrilled. So why not see it as that? Now you're giving the Swami has taken the grapes. But also on the other hand, there is responsibility. And these are the thoughts that occurred to me. And the responsibility was to say the boy that is not the correct action to do. You know, so at the same time, recognizing the divinity within that child, but also the fact that we're living on this planet and we have a game to play and a part to play. But, you know, I don't know the right and wrongs of everything all the time, but these are the things that I still think about and that I feel, you know, are Swami's teachings and what is right, what is wrong. Yeah.
So there was time when, you know, when you lived at Swami's house at the back, you had stayed at the hut, right? You had some nice experiences with Swami coming by through the back door, visiting you, chapati story. We'd like to hear that, please. I think those are just very intriguing.
Were you there then when he gave us the 3 rooms on the side of Vrindavan to stay in?
No.
So right. So we were staying. He gave us these 3 rooms. One was the bathroom, which everybody used. The next had been a storage room, and the other room we didn't have really access to. So we used that storage room as our kitchen. So India would cook in that kitchen, and we washed our clothes and things like that outside and in a well, and we would hang them on the line. So we're at the side of the ashram at the back, and we're cooking meals. And we're where are we going to put the water? Where's the drain? So we throw it out the door. So the water is building up. So we put some stones so that we can step across the stones to get into this little hut to do the cooking. India was always the main cook. And we hung our laundry outside there. So Swami comes walking around the side to give darshan. And the Indian ladies are horrified, because here we've strung this load of laundry and he has to part it to get through. And then he tiptoes across the stones past with all the dirty water underneath to come into our hut. So like I said, we thought he is our mother and our father. We just treated him like that. And even though knowing that he was divine, and he walks in, and India is making, so we're making chapatis, and we didn't know how to make chapatis very well. We couldn't get them to be round. One of them had the shape of Swami, so, you know, with curly hair at the top. And so we drew a picture and said, Swami held up that chapati and said, see, omnipresent everywhere in chapatis. But then he picked up one of the chapatis. He folded it in half. He braided it. I think Howard told the story. He braided it and he blew into it. And he said, now you put in sweets or savory. And then he crumpled it up and put it back into the pile. And then everybody pulled it out and ate it. We shared it and we ate it. I mean, it was phenomenal. One time he told us, I'm sending you milk. So India, Vijay, and I were waiting many days. No milk has come. So we decide we'll march into the back of the mandir, the back of the bungalow in Vrindavan. And after Swami's meal, he usually would come out, and we came and we said, Swami, no milk has come. He says, no milk has come? He says, Raja Reddy drank it all. Raja Reddy was one of his major devotees. Raja Reddy drank it all. Then he took us into the house and he opened a cupboard. And in the cupboard were tins of namkins, of fruit, nuts, anything that you could think of. He filled our arms. I give you what you want so that someday you may want what I have to give. And he filled us. The milk didn't come in that humor, but he filled us up with everything from his heart and his house. I mean, it was great. Then there was the time he the first summer course, Swami was there every day, and it was at the back. It was at the back of this bungalow in Vrindavan. And there was a speaker. And this one speaker, he spoke mostly in Telugu, and it was droned on, whatever. He did speak in English. And afterwards, I was standing up near Swami, and Swami says, "How was the speech?" I said, "Not so good, Swami." He says, no. He says, "How was I?" I said, "You, Swami? You're wonderful, Swami. You're wonderful, Swami. 3-4 times, you're wonderful, Swami." To have got the chance to say such a thing to Swami, "You're wonderful, Swami." Oh, wonderful. He was wonderful. Wonderful. My mother came to see him, as Heidi will tell you the story of her parents. Why don't you tell your story, Heidi?
Yeah, it was almost 2 years to a day when my parents came to visit. And of course, it turned out to be wonderful indeed. But the first interview that we were called for, there was another couple there from New York City whose daughter had been told she had terminal cancer, and they were, of course, very worried about her. And she had been at Sai Baba's for a number of months the summer before. Now, this was January, and Swami was at Vrindavan, and he called. I think it was the second day my parents were there. He called us and this other couple for interview. And we all went up and sat on the porch outside of the interview room. And we sat there for probably a couple hours. And this couple, the Duncans, Mr. Duncan was starting to obviously get annoyed and impatient and even angry about being made to wait all this time. Finally, Swami came out and called us into the side room and gave us a little bit of prasad and kind of apologized, saying he had been very unusually busy that morning and we should all come back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for an interview, and we should come straight up and sit right outside the interview door again. So we went out to lunch at this. Later, you have a picture of the pump house and us sitting outside of it having lunch, and then probably went to these little rooms that Michele and I had. So my parents and these other people could rest. Yeah.
We will come back to these pictures, but I just want to show you this pump house.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah. And the person in the front there is me, and the couple in the back are the Duncans, and I'm not sure where my parents are. Well, my dad was taking the picture, but anyway, we're having lunch there. And we go back to the interview room at 4 o'clock. And once again, we sit and wait and wait and wait. And once again, Mr. Duncan is getting very impatient and really angry. And I'm getting kind of afraid that he's just going to do something like get up and leave. He was very nervous because they had a phone call booked to their daughter in New York. And in those days, you couldn't just pick up the phone and call. You had to book a call ahead of time. And he was nervous about getting back to Bangalore in time for that call. Anyway, finally, Baba calls us in and first spends a long time talking to this couple about their daughter and praising how wonderful she is, and saying over and over again, don't worry, she's my responsibility. And then he waved his hand, as he would often do. He'd make a big wave like this, and you could hear these crystals clinking together. And then suddenly you actually saw this crystal mala flying off his hand, which he gave to them to take back to their daughter. And I cannot actually remember, and I didn't make it clear in my writing at that time. I think he was ambiguous about whether their daughter was going to survive or not. In some ways, he said things that made it sound like she would, and in some ways that she wouldn't. And she didn't after some months. But then he turned to my parents and started talking about my mother's eye and a problem she was having with her eye. And he often did this. You wouldn't speak to him about anything. He would tell you, you know. But first he said to her, "Oh, you're very sad." And she was kind of flustered and said, "No, Swami, I'm very happy, you know." And then he talked about her eye, which she was supposed to have an operation on. She had cataract and some other problem. And he told her not to have the operation and that he would cure it and that he would later give us medicine for it. And anyway, when that interview is over and we're walking out of the interview room, as my father passes Swami, he gives Swami this huge bear hug. And I was kind of shocked. I'd never seen anybody do that before. And I never saw anybody do that again, actually, but it was really sweet, I have to say. So when we go back to the hotel, and later that evening, my mother says to me, "Oh, you know, Swami was right. He wasn't talking about that I was unhappy at that moment in the interview room. He was talking about that I have been feeling very unhappy for a long time." And that's what he was talking about. And that's something I think that also happened with Swami a lot. He would say something to you, and sometime it might be years later before you really understood or it made sense to you what he had said and why. But anyway, I thought people might like to hear there's 3 little instances where when we were in his house, he invited us to come in his house every day, which was to me an absolute dream come true. You know, I had been for months and months watching all these people getting to go into Swami's house every morning while I sat out there and he didn't say a word to me. And I thought, why do they get to do this? But suddenly I was getting to go in there and sit. And it was a long, narrow room. Women would sit at one side, the men would sit at the other. And Swami would often come in and joke or play with people. My mother used to wear this big watch on a chain around her neck. And that, for some reason, seemed to absolutely fascinate Swami. He would frequently come and stand in front of her and maybe he would go back and forth like this and say, tick, tock, tick, tock. Or one time, what's that song? He stood there looking at that watch and was singing that bhajan about God being in one's heart. I can't remember the words to it now. And later I thought, well, yeah, he was not only looking at the watch, he was looking right at her heart, which essentially was right over that watch. But as far as him talking about himself, which doesn't seem like he did too often, but after we had been there a while, the Hisloffs arrived, and Jack Hisloff wrote a number of books about Baba, and he would ask him questions and then write down the answers. And so he kind of stimulated a lot of this kind of talk. And there was one day, Swami was sitting on the floor, like you see in that picture that you opened with, which he would frequently do. And Hisloff was, just like that. And Hisloff was asking him about the Kalki avatar and, trying to get him to say something about this Kalki avatar. And Swami was sitting there and he was kind of playing with a little ball of fuzz that came from that rug that he's sitting on. And he played with it for quite a while. And then he was quiet for a while. And then he just kind of threw it towards Hisloff and said in a very matter-of-fact way. You're sitting in his presence. And I thought that was quite something, and also quite something just how Swami did that. It was like he, the same way he did miracles so often, as though it wasn't really much of anything that he was doing. It was very casual. And another time, Kissoff was asking Swami, he said, why is it that that when Krishna was on earth, very few people recognized who he was, but today you're here and people are coming to you by the thousands. How come they're recognizing you so much more now than they recognize Krishna? And Baba said, well, they don't really. Very few people know who I really am. And then he used this example. He said, when you and your wife go back to Bangalore, your wife is going on thinking, oh, Swami is in Vrindavan, Swami is in Vrindavan. And that, what he was trying to say there is that we always mistook who he really was for that form. And I think it's definitely true, not only mistook it, but became very attached to that form. And then there was one other instance where Kissoff was talking to Swami, and I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but as I remember, he was trying to kind of insist that the form was divine. The body was divine, and Swami was listening to him for a while, and he finally points to himself and he says, not divine body, which I thought was also interesting. Just to me, those are like some little clues of directly from Swami, of perhaps of who he is, but I was always very mindful how often he would say, don't try to figure me out, don't try to figure out who I am, try to figure out who you are. And although it was always a temptation, and still is, try to figure out who he was, because it was such a mystery.
And it happens to be that this weekend is the Aradhana weekend, right? And what you say is so powerful that, we are attached to his form. Even now we look at his form and we are attached to his form, but he really wants us to go beyond that. And Aradhana Day must have been for somebody who has lived with Swami to kind of experience that. Actually, it would be nice to know what kind of changes you had gone through due to Aradhana or Swami Samadhi.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, personally, I mean, I definitely, and even before that, I definitely missed being around Swami. There was nothing like just being in his presence, I think it might have been Howard who said something about this, and when he was talking, just that feeling as though everything were perfect, as though there were no problem, as though there was no question, as though there were no doubt, actually, when one was in his presence. But then, of course, I certainly found that those things would fall back on me, very quickly afterwards. But do you want me to tell this taxi story? Because that was probably the most amazing miracle that I experienced with him. I mean, definitely.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. And I still have no idea what actually happened, but it was evening time. We would often also come back to the house in the evening, and Swami would often show movies or have the college boy ask him to talk about things or this or that. I have to take this one little detour because it was so funny. One movie night, Ram Brahma was there, and Swami was seating everybody, and there was all this joking around, and he was trying to get Ram Brahma to sit in his seat, and Ram Brahma was like, oh no, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that. It was just so amusing, that Swami's way of playing with people and joking around, which was great to experience that side of him. Anyway, after one of these evenings, we go back to we share a taxi to go back to the city with the Hislofs. And after driving a while, our driver, everybody, the way they drove there, you would honk at somebody and then you would pass, so somehow the honking took care of any problems. So we pulled out around this truck, lorry, and right in front of us was another car coming. It should have been within seconds of a total collision. But instead, within seconds, that other car was going down the road behind us. I turned around, saw its lights go down. And this all happened so fast and was so weird. You think, what could have happened? We were dematerialized and rematerialized on the other side of this car. It just was bizarre that you almost didn't believe it, even as you had just experienced it. And my father said, oh, we've got to find somebody to translate for the driver and ask him what happened. I kind of laughed at that a bit at the time, but now I kind of wish we had done that. I would like to have had his take on it as well. Anyway, the next morning we're back in that little side room there in Swami's house, and talking had been going on for a while, and towards the end of it, Hislof gets up and bows to Swami and says, I have to thank you for last night. And as Swami so often did, he stopped him and instead described what had happened. And then said, Swamiji's protection, Swamiji's protection. And said, oh, you were all too shocked to ask for help. Well, not only were we too shocked, but there wasn't time. It just happened like that. So anyway, that happening has always been in my head all these years, and thought about it a lot, and thought about it also in connection with the fact that although Swami materialized pills from my mother's eyes, and months later, after my folks had left, and she would write me and say, nothing has gotten any better. And I would ask Swami again, he would again promise healing, but he never did that. So to my mind, I always put those two things together. On the one hand, it's obvious that, I don't know, his powers, whatever it is, that he could have saved us from that accident. And on the other hand, he chose to say he was going to do this healing and chose not to do it. Because I have no doubt that if he wanted to do it, he could have. And I also have no doubt my mother didn't bring it up. He brought it up. So he brought this into the conversation. So to me, that indicates there's something he's trying to say with this. And even after all these decades, I can't really tell you what that was, but I don't doubt that he was, that it was a teaching, that the whole thing is a teaching.
And though you may never know the meaning of that teaching, you contemplate it.
I think a part of it actually is, if I can put it this way, it's a kind of humility. I think we have a tendency, a very human tendency, to want Swami to be this or that or the other thing, or to conform to some kind of standards that are our standards. And that finally one has to give that up and realize he's not going to conform to my standard. I mean, why should he? I wouldn't even want that. If he did, then, then he'd be nothing more than what I am. So that's how I look at it anyway.
Michelle,
Yes.
do you have
Yes.
anything that you would like to add on to this, or?
I'm going to show you the kind of crystal japamala that Swami would materialize.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, and it would just shoot out of his hand like that.
Mm-hmm.
What the Swami's samadhi and Swami leaving his body form, he already had stopped speaking to me for almost 18 years. So in those, and like Swami said, sometimes Swami is talking and everybody's happy, and sometimes I don't look. That is a better time, sir. And I love the way he used to call us sir, because maybe this millennial people might like that. So I get happy and then I forget where I was going.
You were saying about 18 years he wasn't speaking with you, so, and it's almost like samadhi.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I had no choice but to internalize, to conjure him. And he said, and that's a better time. I mean, he really made me, I mean, I'm still so terribly attached to his form. So for me, the way I meditate or the way I contemplate is I can see him sitting in the chair opposite me. I make my mind see him there. I make my heart feel him there. I can hear his voice saying, Duna Buddha, or Chandralekha, or, a crazy lady, and the endearment of that and the joy of the sound of his voice. So for me, I didn't want to go. The last time I went, it was in Vrindavan, and everybody gave me a really nice seat. I mean, because I'm an old devotee, whatever. So I'm sitting like 10 rows back, but I'm not in the front and I'm not on the sides, but I'm sort of stuck in the middle. And a series of events happened where someone who used to get a lot of attention was crying. And then Swami was talking to her again, and then she was happy. And I'm sitting, and Swami is sitting in the front, and people are pushing to get 2 centimeters closer to Swami, and everybody's pushing. And suddenly my whole consciousness went to laughter. Everybody thinks they're going to get closer to Swami like this. And suddenly I lived for 2 days in a consciousness that understood that everything is perfect exactly the way it is. And that's a spiritual experience. Sometimes I wish I could hold on to that forever. But these are these little epiphanies, these little experiences we have where, my friend, what's her name? She from Mexico, Gail Muniz came out of the interview room. She went on for about 20 minutes. Oh, Michele, he's really a God. He's really a God. He's really a God. And, you have these moments where you just get it, and it's so joyful. And, I think you have to keep holding on to those and until they expand into your consciousness forever. And so for me, it was really a wonderful thing that he stopped talking to me. But one of the great things that happened when he wasn't talking to me for so many years, and my 2 children were in school there. So one was in like the 10th standard where you get out earlier. So I was taking her, we went somewhere with some of her classmates, but my husband was going to wait for the little one to come out, and then we would meet in America. And Swami hadn't spoken to me for so many years. Or is this when we were actually leaving? We were leaving for Shanti Nilayam, and I didn't know that we were going to never come back. I didn't know that. But Mrs. Shari was very kind to me. She could be very kind to me sometimes. When I was sick, she came to my house every day and fed me something. She could be very kind, and she could be very harsh too, but she was very kind to me, and I always appreciate her for that. So she said, Michele, tell him you're leaving. So I sat, she gave me a front row seat. I had a letter. He didn't take it 3 times. She said, one more time, try. And I said to Swami in my form of Telugu, Swamiji, Sayankalamu potanu. It means in the evening I am going. And suddenly he turns around, what? And he says, oh, he says, where is husband? Where is daughter? He says, I explained the situation. He says, bring her tomorrow. He said, take Padnamaskar. And the next day he made us vibhuti and he gave us both Padnamaskar. And I didn't know that I would never come back. I would never come back as a family, that we would be in America forever. Or, because you just don't know. He's learned to love my uncertainties. I mean, and the very last thing he ever said to me in an interview room was he put his finger like this. He says, you think whatever happens, it is good for me. It is good for me. And often I have to remember that. If I get sick, if I get hurt, if I get mad, whatever circumstances bring you, it is good for me. It is good for me. And that experience of being in Vrindavan where everything was absolutely perfect. So Swami did me a great favor by not talking to me, by making me look deeper, by finding him. But, I still use his form every minute, all the time, thinking about him, thinking about this joy. And my husband and I often think, wow, what a chance we got. How lucky, and how lucky we were in those early days, Heidi, with the devotion that we felt, with the singing to Krishna, with the dancing, with when we were alone on the roof, thinking, oh, Krishna's here. And it was just so divine. It was divine to be with him and to experience. And even the scoldings were great. I mean, and once the light storm had come, this group, and I was very, very close to them. I helped deliver this baby. And in my hut, Swami sent a doctor, but I had to hold her. And it was on a dirt floor on a raincoat that she delivered this baby. So they asked Swami, they were going in every night to sing bhajans with Swami. And I knew I was kind of out at the time. There were times you were in, there were times you were out. And they said, no, we asked Swami if we could bring you. And he said, yes, come. And I knew in my heart of hearts, this was a setup. This is not my time. It's not. So I went. And when he saw me, his face went cloud black blue. Why? Go. Now I remember it. And it was hard. I went across that same field where the boy took the crying the entire way. And yet now somehow it's bittersweet memory. Who will scold you? Who will train you? Who will go to all that trouble except your mother, your Lord, your God? Even to ignore you takes a lot of effort.
Swami was very good at that. You have to admit.
Yes. God.
And Michele, there was a question that came up saying, you went back to India for 10 years with your family. And as you were leaving, when Swami gave that final interview for you, what year was that? Do you remember?
I don't know. My husband's not feeling well, so I can't ask him when that was.
That's okay.
No problem. We lived there for 10 years. The girls went to the higher secondary school from the time Sujana was 5 till she was 15, and Sumana was 7 till almost 17. And
so it says, 1985, you went to India for 10 years. So it must have been 1995 sometime. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. So I have an interesting question to ask you. So you have been known as Sai hippies, although Michele, took a while for you to become a Sai hippie. Swami has called you Panchapandavas. Swami you have called yourselves Baba's gopis, right? What a blessing, honestly, what a blessing to have experienced the life of gopis and following Swami regardless of his wishes. Can you please share those stories?
Yeah, once were you in the car with Mr. Kamani in Bombay when it was still Bombay and not Mumbai? He was a very wealthy and very well-known devotee of Sai Baba's, and he was very kind. His family was very, very kind to me. And we were at Kurukshetra and we were trying to follow Swami somewhere. We were in Mr. Kamani's car and he was saying, oh, you're all such gopis. And we were saying, no, Mr. Kamani, you are the gopi, because here you are with a driver in your car trying to follow Swami everywhere. It just started off in the early days. Somehow we had taxis and I had this uncanny way of knowing where Swami was going to go and what he was going to do. Some of it was people would just tell me. And sometimes I didn't even want to know, like the time he went to the jungle for Shivaratri, there was going to be no Shivaratri. And I didn't even want to know. But somebody comes running out and says, Swami's going to the jungle. I couldn't resist it. And I ran down the road. Howard, get the cars. We got to go follow Swami to the jungle. And we followed Swami to the jungle. And when we got there, he sent Hislop out to send us away. So he sent us, he was in Mudnahalli. Mudnahalli, was that correct, Heidi, or was it a different jungle?
I don't know. I wasn't there at that time. I think that's when I was north with my parents.
You were north.
Yeah.
And anyway, he sent us to the adjoining, he sent us away, so we went to an adjoining jungle. I know that some of those people who had been in the caravan snuck back into where Swami was, and they saw him materialize things and do all these wonderful things. But I didn't have the courage to do that at that time. But that whole day, I was walking around the jungle, and I came to this little mandir, and I saw Shirdi Baba within the mandir. Mm-hmm. So I felt very blessed, and that Swami was with me, and we were singing Shirdi, Shirdi Sai Parti Sai Amko Dijo Premamrita Dhara. And it was wonderful. Mm-hmm. It was still wonderful, even having been sent away. And then there was the Kamani's following Swami. It was Kamani's anniversary, right? And there was a tiffin carrier, practically the size of a big boy. I mean, it was a big, huge tiffin carrier, and it had a car of its own. And we were following Swami, and then Swami stops on the side of the road, and it's dark. It's getting dark out, and there are lorries coming down. And Swami asked me, I don't know if he asked me or he asked in general, but I understood and knew that car had stopped to get gas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he says, where's my tiffin carrier? Where's my tiffin carrier? And I said, Swami, they went to get gas. So he says, the food needs food, something like that, only in a little different manner. Anyway, the tiffin carrier came. Swami opens the tiffin carrier. There's a big plate of food made for him, and I'm standing right next to him, and he's eaten a little bit from this plate, not much. And then he shows me the plate. And I'm thinking, that's your food, Swami. I can't touch your food. I can't touch your food, Swami. He says, no, this is prasad. This is also prasad. So we took a little bit, and then it was passed around to everybody. But how every time a lorry passed with its lights on, Swami would duck down behind the cars.
I think that's when India said to Swami, oh, they've stopped for petrol. And then she said to him, oh, you're my petrol. And he said, yes, come fill up, but there will be a cost. Cost is mind. Cost is your mind.
He really did teach us a lot. He really did. I mean, in all of the antics and in all of the funniness, and all of the scoldings. And on the other hand, you are no jealousy, only too much love for Swami, no anger, only body weakness. And on the other hand, donkeys are better, dogs are better. Just an amazing array of things and leelas and plays. I mean, the time he was mad when Heidi got there because we all thought we were gopis. So we decided when Swami's car left Buddha Party, we could stand on the side of the road and make a chain so his car couldn't go any further and he'd have to stop and talk to us. Woo, big mistake.
Yeah.
He
But
was-
even those trips following Swami, you never knew if there was going to be some wonderful, blissful outcome or if he was going to be angry. And it was very, there was a lot of tension there too, because you did not know what was going to end up happening. And he did let us follow him a couple of times. And then it was maybe the third time we followed to Anantapur, where this women's college was.
Talk about how we stopped on the side of the road.
Yeah, but wait, let me finish this thing. And we sat all day. There was this open breezeway, I guess, went to the building in his room, his steps in his room was up above that. And we sat the whole day in there trying to ask Swami whether it was okay that we be there, whether there was some place we could sleep for the night. And he was just studiously ignoring everybody. And you knew he was not pleased with us being there. And we didn't do that again after that. So I think we tried one more time. He told us not to follow, and then he gave us apples or something, and we were okay. We were happy with that, and we didn't try to follow him that time. But
at the time when we did go to Anantapur, and there was you, me, and Mrs. Rao and her daughter. Was there any third person? Another
yes,
note?
her friend, was that a friend of hers? Remember?
I know. Yeah,
Remember her
I
name
remember.
now. Yeah.
But we had followed Swami, and Swami at the Anantapur cutoff, where you would go to Bangalore or Anantapur, Swami's car stopped, and I went up.
Well, it had stopped before. It had gotten stuck in the mud, and you got out and went to have darshan at his car, and he said, "Don't follow me. I'm only going for a few hours. Go straight to Bangalore." Yeah.
And then I got back in the car, and there was a big discussion. There was Heidi was always the most intelligent, or
I don't know. Maybe I was.
she was the most logical.
Maybe I was the most scared. I don't know.
I don't know. And we had this debate: should we go? Should we not go? Well, Mrs. Rao and I, well, we should go. We won't go inside. We'll just sit on the outside and wait for his car, because we knew it wasn't going to be just a few hours. And anyway, and I thought to myself, okay, Swami, I'm a hard case. You'll have to teach me the hard way, but we're just going to follow you anyway. And we went to Anantapur, and we stood on the outside, and then Swami came out on the balcony and waved us in. And that's when he gave us the most wonderful time. And that's when he called us the Pancha Pandavas. How did you know Swami's plans?
Yeah.
And it was marvelous. And then one time he was very angry that he was being followed. And he yelled at Nalini and other people. And I said, "And me, Swami?" He said, "No, not for you." But about 3 weeks later, it was for me. So,
Yes,
yeah.
that darshan from the balcony when he first waved us in, that's the one time I actually saw an aura around him, and it was as though there was this golden light coming off of him. And he really seemed to be Krishna at that point. And I think he was playing with the
he did.
shooting
He shot
arrows.
us with arrows.
Yeah.
He shot us with arrows. Yeah. It was really nice. So this is on the road. This is what following Swami might have looked like, and he did look like on some certain trips, and he would stop. This is when he was building this road from Whitefield essentially to Prashanti Nilayam, so that it was a more direct route than the other way used to take more time. And he was having a look at this road, and you can see how casual it was. And just, that we even got to do that and see that. This is him being very Krishna-like. And this is at Anantapur with Indra Devi. And
yes, and some of the group she had brought, they were part of his actual invited party, as we were not.
And anyway, and yeah, there was another incident, a tiffin carrier incident there where he suddenly he had fed everybody a breakfast, and then he remembered his driver, and he reopened the tiffin carrier and made a plate for his driver and gave it to me to get it delivered. And I was in bliss because I was now the servant of the Lord. And it made me happy.
Oh, show the pictures in the house. There was just one little story that I didn't tell about those the men in that house.
No, back to Heidi's slide.
The slides at the that my father took. Okay. Well, you'll see on the one on the left, that's Swami talking to the women. My mother is way at the end there, and I think I'm next to her. But this other picture, show Swami sitting on the floor first with these. Yeah, he's talking to these men from Delhi, I think, and he spent a long time talking to them in Hindi. And then after that, you go back to the other one, he got up and posed with them like this so my father could take a picture. And then after Dad took this picture, then he says, Swami doesn't need a camera. And he starts his hand around, and he made 4 almost like little business cards with this picture on it, and gave them to these 4 men who were there.
And this is the first picture Swami ever gave me.
Mm.
This is from 1970, Shivaratri.
Yeah.
He materialized a pack of them and gave them to everyone who was in the room.
Yeah. Actually, do you want to see a picture that in one of the interviews with my parents, I was sitting right close to him so that I could see as his hand went around, I could see underneath, and I first saw this kind of flash of gray light, and then it materializes into this picture. Let me see.
Cool.
And it's just quite a big picture. And Swami was pretty small, and his hands were small. He could hardly get them around this picture. And he gave that to my mother. And of course, my mother was absolutely thrilled. He never made a material object for me. And actually, maybe one final story, I don't know, it's getting too late. But the second time I went to visit to see Swami, which was 76, 77, something like that. And when I was leaving, I was in the regular interview room in Prasanthi Nilayam, and then he had a little side place that was divided by a curtain where he would take people individually. And he took me in there and he asked me, what do you want? And I said, faith. And he asked me again, what do you want? And I said the same thing. Now I'm beginning to think he wants me to say that I want a ring or a pendant or something like that. So then he asked me a third time, and I said, faith again. And then he said with his hands, I had my hands kind of down, and he said like this, I'm giving, I'm giving, I'm giving. And
Okay, I don't know how to get back to this.
There should be a video button. You can press the video.
I'm trying to get back to the Zoom meeting. I don't know if I press this X, I might be out altogether.
Yes, yeah, don't press the X, but there should be just the video is, we cannot hear you, we cannot see you, that's all, but we can hear you.
Do you have any other specific questions or things?
Yeah, actually, I did have. I'm not sure which one of you is had more of a direct contact with Mother Ishwarama, because we celebrate Ishwarama's May 6th around the world, and as others Mother's Day, and you had the blessings of being around her. So would you be able to share what she was like, and what kind of interactions have you had with her?
Michelle, you probably had.
She actually dropped. She would probably join back very soon. I think she just had accidentally dropped.
Yeah, because I didn't much. I remember after she passed, the Swami giving a talk about honoring your parents and your mother, and then him going to her samadhi, I guess, to put that into action. And the other thing that I think it was her and his sister, I don't remember just who they were. Michelle always knew the Indian.
Who is that?
Better.
Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back, Michelle. We can see you and hear you very well.
So who are you talking about?
So we're talking about your experience of having been with Mother Ishwarama, because Ishwarama's day is coming, and it'd be nice to know what she was like, because
she protected us a couple of times. First of all, it was a great honor once to Swami, because somebody told Swami I could sing. This was very early on. This was like early 70, when I was only there for a few weeks. So he asked his mother to come and sit in the interview room and ask me to sing. And at that time I sang, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Baba, my Divine Baba. And I sang a lot of, door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come? Because Swami would walk around the house. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Precious Swami, come to me. And I got to sing for his mother, and I think I sang some Indian bhajans too. And then another time when Swami was mad at all of us foreigners, Swami said his mother, I think maybe Kasturi told me, or somebody told me, that his mother said, Swami, they've left everything, their parents and everything. They've come here. You are their protector. You're the only one. You can't send them away. She protected us a couple of times. And then there was a time where my mother had come, and Swami was making just a day trip to Prashanti Nilayam. So my mother could hardly walk in the sand. It was so hot, because this was not when Swami usually stayed in Prashanti Nilayam. But he asked us if we would take his mother in our car until he would stop his car. And she lived in a little hut right behind his building. And there are so many wonderful stories of, there was a whole big, one of the stories I heard, of course I didn't witness, but one of the stories I heard was somebody complained about all the noise, because Swami's mother used to see people. I mean, you could go and visit her and, take namaskar from her. And she was very sweet. And, but somebody said, oh, so much noise is going on. And Swami said, find out what it is. And they said, it's your mother, Swami. And he said, tell my mother to make less noise. And she got mad. And she packed up and she says, tell him I am his mother. He can't tell me. And so she went back to the village. And then like some weeks later or some time later, Swami sent word, no, you should come back. He says, you should come back. You want to come back. And Swami's mother said, does he want me to come back? Or he had to apologize, basically. And she came back. So this time she came in our car, and we were driving, we left the ashram and we stopped down the road. Swami's car stopped. He got out of his car, came over to our car, opened the door to take his mother into his car. And he looked over at my mother and he said, do you want to come? And I was like, yay, I want to go. But my mother didn't say anything. He said, another time. And I never did get to ride in his car, although I got to ride behind him in an airplane, which was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
can you tell that story, please? That's quite funny.
So I'm sitting on the airplane behind Swami, and we were going to Delhi, and how I got on that airplane is a miracle, just a complete miracle. And Anyway, so I'm sitting right behind Swami because that was the only available seat. And we stopped in Hyderabad. Swami got off the plane and somebody must have garlanded him. He got back on the plane and there was an earthworm in his hair, a little tiny, little 1 inch, little tiny worm, not even an inch, just a 1/4 of an inch worm. And I whispered to Mrs. Hislop's sister-in-law, Gracie. So I said, there's a worm in Swami's hair. And Swami put his head back and he said, what? He said, Swami, there's a worm in your hair. He says, oh, take it. And suddenly I could not raise my hands. In my mind, I was going into a forest. There was going to be the universe in there. There were going to be snakes in there. There was going to be the total universe. I could not put my hands in that hair because it was like when Krishna opened his mouth and he showed the entire universe. I thought this is what's going to happen. And I was scared. And then he leaned over to Gokak, who was next to him, and said, take. And it took about 15 minutes looking for that little earthworm. But I was paralyzed. I just could not put my hands in that hair. Although when I put a garland over him once, my hands did brush his hair. And I have here, within this little piece of a lock of Swami's hair. I know. That was given to me by Vijaya, one of the bhajan singers at Prashanti Nilayam. So it's got Swami's little piece of Swami's hair in here.
What a blessing. So many instances where Swami is just showing his humanness and his divine powers all at the same time. I know, Heidi, you wanted to kind of go through these pictures of inside Swami's home, where where you also had a chance to go in and interact with him. Would you like to go through this?
Well, just show the one of his dining room again, because there was, I think it was my 2nd birthday there. And at that time, the young foreign women could ask to come up to his dining room on their birthdays. And Swami was at Prashanti Nilayam, and then there was rumors he was coming to Whitefield. So then this uncertainty again, I didn't know if he was going to be there on my birthday or not. But finally, I got a ride, I think that morning, and got there before lunchtime. So I requested to go up there, and I was allowed to go up. Swami's sitting like that in that simple little room. And I get Pad Namaskar, and then he gave me 2 mangoes and a pack of juicy fruit gum, which he called chiclet. He would say it as though it was 2 words, which I thought was quite amusing. But I didn't think about it until really quite a bit later, how odd it was that he would even have a pack of juicy fruit gum there in Prashanti Nilayam in 1972 or something. And I wonder about that even now. He didn't, at least that I saw, produce either of these things. They were there on his table when I came up. And I thought it quite an odd thing for him to give me.
We also would sometimes bring Swami food like mashed potatoes or an enchilada or avocado, all kinds of strange things for him to eat. They let us bring them up.
Yeah. But was it not also that those women who would cook and bring his food would say that his favorite food was the very simple village fare that he had grown up with, which I thought is interesting as well, what it tells about him. And I never, for all the many times that he would give lunches or meals for people, and he would maybe be sitting there like this and also taking food, seemed like he ate very little, like he would take just a few little pieces, and that was it.
I just wanted to show this picture of, this is where bhajans take place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is where, Michelle, do you want to tell the story? This is you, leading bhajan practice, I think.
Yeah, that's when Swami, that was, I think, in the spring of 71. He started calling us into the college room for bhajans. Is that the interview room door though? Are we sitting?
It's the interview room door because of the roundness.
I can't imagine where else that would be. So that's where you would sit if you were called for an interview. And that's where my parents and I and the Duncan sat for so many hours on that.
Why we were practicing there, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems odd to me, but.
It's all right. It was great. It was really fun teaching bhajans to Nora and some of the people who came later on. Because Swami had sent Vijaya, who was one of the prime singers at the ashram in the early days, to teach me bhajans. And it was very hard because I couldn't make the pronunciations all right. And I was it's a big, long story. I don't know how much more time we have. Do we have, does this thing have a terminal date, a terminal time? Because that's another very long story. No answers.
Yeah.
And that picture, of course, is my wedding.
Yes, yes, we would like to hear that too. It's
one very
long
story. How much time do we have?
Okay, fair enough. We have probably about 10-15 minutes to wrap up. If you'd like to share the story, go ahead. I know you have an earring that Swami materialized for your wedding, right?
Okay, so these are the earrings he materialized. And it was a double wedding ceremony. Of course, my marriage was a complete miracle to begin with because I didn't know him. It was arranged through Mrs. Goldstein in some ways. Swami called me in. He sent me back to America in 1973 when Heidi went back and me and Vijay went back. And Vijay and I Heidi and I traveled north to see, we traveled north because Swami had told me once, people were asking for permission to go see Neem Karoli Baba. And he looked at me and he said, you don't go anywhere, you just sing bhajans. But then Swami was sending me back to America. So I said, well, now you don't want me, Swami. I was so childlike. I said, now I'll go see this Neem Karoli Baba. And oh God, why was I telling the story? They just bring me back to where I started.
The marriage.
So, but why would that have come in? Let's see.
So we were showing the picture of.
I showed you the pictures of the earrings. And so he sent me back to America. He called me 5 times. He said, do marriage. Marriage is a good way of life, steady way of life. Young people are coming and going in the office. I will look for a good man doing good work. I will perform your marriage Indian style. Your mother will be there. Do try. Mother will be there very happy. So I'm thinking there are 5 interviews of this. And I'm sitting in the Purnachandra next to a very big blonde-haired lady from California who turns out to be Gloria Goldstein. And I think this is what Swami is telling me. She says, I know this great guy in California. I said, fine, you arrange it Indian style. I'm through picking my own. And then I went back to New York. And what am I going to do? I'm going to put a picture in an ad in the newspaper.
Swami told my mother to put an ad in the newspaper for marriage for me, which I was not very happy hearing him say that, I have to say.
But you did find David.
The end, I met my husband to an ad in the newspaper. So
anyway, so
20 years later.
So I didn't hear from anybody, but a friend of mine named Mark, he went to India and he was put in a room with a bunch of men and he says, oh, I know this great girl in New York, you should meet her. And this man says, long distance romance, who needs that, but he was a photographer and he took some beautiful pictures of Swami. He said, and he had them developed and he sent some to my friend in New York, Mark, and he said, give one to that girl and give one to the Sai Center. So I was secretary of the Sai Center. When I got the photographs, I knew this is the same man that lady was talking about. And I was thinking to myself, Swami, is this your way of doing it? This is crazy, you know? And, but I had to write, I wrote a very nice thank you note and he liked my thank you note. So he phoned me on the phone. So I said, and he's in California. So I said, did you know Gloria Goldstein? She told me about you. He said, yeah, I know her very well. Turns out that his name is Richard Kaplowitz. My mother's maiden name was Kaplow. We are the identical Jewish families, East Coast, West Coast. We could have been interchangeable. Our parents were in similar businesses. Everybody I asked about him said, oh, he's such a good man. He does so many, he's very generous, he's very kind, he does good things. And so he was fitting all the bills. So anyway, so when I phoned him up, he said, well, I had a dream 2 years ago and I never met him because I left in August of 73 and he came in September of 73. He said, I had a dream with Swami. I was with some other men in a room. Swami opened the doors to some ladies dressed in white. And he said, pick your husbands. He said, in that dream, I looked at one lady and I said, pick me, pick me. I said, okay, we'll exchange photographs. Maybe I won't look like the girl in the dream because I really thought I was just a gopi I would never marry. And so I looked like the girl in his dream. So it was decided that and we had all these other coincidences. So he flew to New York to meet me. And the first night we went out to dinner with Mark and his friend, and he didn't like me. I was very nervous. I had cut my hair short. I was very kind of excited and scared, very scared. And he went back to Mark's house and he says, I'm getting out of here tomorrow. This is crazy idea. Swami came to in a dream and that night, and he said, you don't go anywhere, you give it a chance or I'll pull your ears. So he got scared. And Swami had also given him in another dream previous to that, where Swami said he would send me a good devotee. Richard had a dream in which Swami was looking through a book and he saw Richard's photograph and he stamped it devotee, Sri Satya Sai Baba. So he fit all the criteria. So the next day we spent together with my sister, and then we went to Pound Ridge where Howard and Phil and Peggy Goslin were. And he says, what do we do now? Do we get married? I said, well, I'm not marrying anyone unless Swami performs my wedding. And I said, I'm going in July. I'll ask Swami. He says, oh, he also has tickets to go in July. I said, oh, that's funny because my mother is also coming in July. So as it turns out, my mother, Richard went to Israel first, and then he met Richard in Bombay and escorted her down to the ashram. My friend Vijay, India's sister Vijay, had phoned me in New York saying, I hear you're going to India. This Wesley wants to marry me. I don't know what to do. Can I come with you? So we went to India and we arrived like July 1st. And then on July 4th, I asked for a group Western interview for July 4th. And then Vijay goes and sits up in front after Swami had scolded us a couple of years previous. And I sat at the back because I'm still scared. And Vijay gives her a picture of Wes and says, this one man wants to do marriage. And Swami says, one man, do marriage, do marriage, do marriage. And then he says, he said, one man, 20 men, do marriage, do marriage. And I very carefully handed my photo up of Richard, and I'm not going to say the same words. I said, there's a proposal here. He says, he looks at the photo and he says, oh, I know this man. He is taking pictures in Uti, very good man. He says, what do you want? How old are you? I said, 33. He says, and now you want marriage? I said, but Swami, you only told me. He says, nah, what do you want? Do you want marriage? And Swami, I don't want to do what pleases you. This is not my business, sir. And he throws the photograph to me in front of with over 35 heads. The picture lands back in my lap. talk about my uncertainties. And then everybody is filing out of the interview room, and I'm starting to get up, and Swami comes by and he says, he is a good man. I will perform marriage in Vrindavan.
It sounds like a very typical arranged marriage.
Yes. So I'm in this complete thing. I thought it was all over. That's the end of it. Now I'm not getting married. Richard and my mother come the next day, and I don't want to see him. I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to look at him. I get my mother and I say, we're going to Darshan, and somehow we wound up in the front row. Somehow, who knows how. And Swami walks and Richard goes to sit on the veranda. He had brought all these framed photos, which are now up in the administration building of Swami that he had taken. And Swami walks over to him and speaks to him, but I don't know what he says because it's far away. And then Swami walks over to my mother and he says, oh, you've come with your son-in-law. And then apparently he said to Richard, you come with your mother-in-law as well. And he called us the next day. And again, he said, do you want marriage? I said, I don't know, Swami, I'm confused. He says, why confusion? Oh no, that came afterwards. Anyway, he says, I will speak to you in Vrindavan. And I will perform marriage in Vrindavan. Then he said, no, I don't. Then in Vrindavan, he said, call your group. Now I have a big group to take care of. And many people came, and he said, no, I don't know marriage. Because Vijay was there and Wesley had come, and he had never left Montana in his life, and he flew all the way to India. And Swami said, no, I don't know how to do Western marriage. And then we said, Vijay and I said, no, Swami, you know everything. Arguing with him was really kind of fun. I mean, when you could say things like that to him, like, no, Swami, you know everything, you can do it. Okay, so he sets the date for the marriage. Everybody leaves the room. He calls my mother and I in to the side, or we're standing outside, I think, actually. And he says, what do you want? He said, if you want it, I will do it. If you don't want, I won't. I said, Swami, is it a good path? Meaning, and he said, yes, it is a good path. I said, then help me to be a good wife. And I touched his feet. And then he set the date for the wedding, and we were late getting there. And Richard thought it wasn't going to happen because we were late. And another little side vignette, a little side miracle, when we were in Prashanti Nilayam many years before that, there was a young lady from, wasn't Singapore, but an Asian country, and her husband was dying of something, and he was up at the hospital, and he actually died, and she didn't know what to do. She was young. She was, she couldn't speak the language either. But by that time, I knew to take her to Anantapur. I took her to Anantapur to get a death certificate. We arranged to have a burial spot and take some pictures so that his mother could see the gravesite, because they weren't too crazy about her not being of the same caste. And who turns up the day before my wedding? This girl. And she's become a makeup artist. And she said, so because I helped her so much, she showed up, and she only wanted to do makeup for me and help me get dressed and all of that. And when Swami gave us the red saris, he looked at that girl and he said, do you want her to help you? So, I mean, that was very meaningful to me. It's there's more to the universe than meets our eye, and there's more connections than we can ever possibly imagine. And so I've been married almost 45 years.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. There's no words to describe this sense of connection to Swami through all of your stories. I do have one last closing thought. I don't know if you remember saying this, but there's something called a freedom story. If that comes to your mind, somebody asked, when will we get enlightenment? Do you remember?
Heidi, what was his name? We called him
We
Freedom.
called Freedom, yeah. What it was his real name? I
Can't remember. I can't remember
Yeah.
his real name,
Mm.
but his name, he was a little older than any of us. And he used to sit, and we called him Freedom. He would always ask Swami about freedom, 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 freedom. But he would sit he would be on the sleeping porch, sort of, with a sleeping net, mosquito net over him, yelling at everybody because they were making too much noise. And he would always, I'm meditating here, and yelling at everybody. And years later, I came to know that he's now, then he became the 86th Street guru for a little while. And he just sat on a bench and didn't speak. And he was known as the 86th Street guru. But now I've heard that he's in Jerusalem at I still know it as the Wailing Wall, but it has another name now, at this wall, yelling at everybody that they're not good enough. so it's like people.
So he's been consistent, you could
He's
say.
been very consistent, and I'm going to Jerusalem, so I hope I run into him there.
So so you said that with Swami. So when asked when will we get enlightenment, Swami said, "I will give it just like that."
I could give it just like that, but it wouldn't be worth it. You need to do the sadhana, or earn it.
Yeah.
But
So
I think he did give it to us just like that. That's what I think. Because
But there's a line in the Bible that I have always thought of, and it sounds right for Swami too. And it says, God will come like a thief in the night. And I think it's referencing this. You don't know. It's very unexpected. There's no way to know when any of these things will or might.
who any of us are, or what
Yeah.
or why, or because I think I don't remember doing anything to earn this bliss that Swami has given.
So here is the picture of your wedding, double wedding that you're talking about, in the red sari that Swami had.
And that's my
Given.
mother, and that's my mother behind us.
Here.
He gave her 20 years of of joy in her life. She was his devotee for so many years. And then when she was dying, I phoned her up because I was still in India. She was in America. She said, "Tell Swami I love him. I am ready. I'm not afraid. Goodbye."
I just want to go through the rest of the pictures so that we didn't miss anything. But then I think this one.
This is on the roof of Swami's house, the one on the right where we're all wearing the brown saris except for Sandy. Swami gave us those saris, and he says that like the pure earth brown color and the green is to keep your heart fresh like green grass. And he said, and he just took this picture with us, and it was great. I mean, this is on the roof of the Vrindavan bungalow, the old bungalow, not Trey Vrindavan, the old bungalow. Yeah, there's BJ, and BJ is to the left, and then Sandy, then Swami, then Janet, then me, then down below me is Om or Jnani. In the middle is India, and the other one is Vicky from England. And there was only like 16 of us to begin with. And he's talked to us almost daily. And like I said, if he didn't talk, we were in tears. It was like we had no sense of reality.
I think we've covered all the pictures. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then finally, it's this picture.
Yeah, that's lunch being served on the other side of Swami's house. The room where we would spend mornings and evenings was to the right, and this is to the left. And the summer school was under a big tent area that was built to the left of here. But Swami would not that infrequently be serving, lunch to this many people or more, if when a wedding went on, or a thread ceremony, or any other ceremonial function.
Bangle ceremonies.
Yeah.
And Swami would sometimes serve you himself. served me a glass of water once.
I just love the stories of Swami genuinely being a mother and a father, physical mother and father, as well as the spiritual mother and father. It's a wonderful set of stories that you have shared. And it really is beautiful for us to hear your firsthand stories of being in the presence of Swami physically, and now even connecting with him with all the visualization and your experiences that you've had. Would you like to share any closing remarks or thoughts?
As Gail Mooney said, he's really a God. It's really, and it's in you. You're not separate from this. God is you. You are God. Realize it. Do the work. I am knocking on the door of your hearts. Heidi?
I guess the metaphor that has always meant the most to me is that of Krishna playing his flute, and that we're like his flute, and it's important that the flute be hollow or it cannot be played. And to me, that means that the bulk of sadhana, if you will, is freeing ourselves from our own desires, demands, opinions, all that stuff that we tend to cling to. So that we tend to feel like we need, or we're not going to survive if we don't have it.
Jai Sai Ram. Thank you both for joining. Thank you for this opportunity to listen to your stories. And of course, thank you, Swami, for being here with us.
Thank you for facilitating this and asking us. Nice to see you.
Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. We will end with the closing prayers. Thank you for joining. We can turn off our videos and mute, and then if that's okay, and we'll have the closing prayers. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram. Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samdarshaka Bhakta Jana Samdarshaka Bhakti Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashivadana Shikara Sarva Pranapate Swami Sarva Pranapate आश्रित कल्पलतीका आश्रित कल्पलतीका आपद्बांधव ओम जय जगदीश हरे माता पिता गुरुदैवमु मरियन्तयुनीवे स्वामी मरियन्तयुनीवे ज्ञान ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ ज्ञान ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ शयन ओम जय जगदीश हरे Sukhino bhavantu samastaloka Sukhino bhavantu samastaloka Sukhino bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Peace, peace, peace Peace on earth Peace, peace, peace For all the universe For all the universe जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की